Well, nurses have started reopening beds tonight, but child protection workers will continue their action, with the Commissioner at Fair Work Australia saying he had no concerns about the bans remaining in place over the weekend. The Community Services Minister was unable to join us for a live interview tonight, but Mary Wooldridge did join me in the studio late this afternoon. Minister, thanks so much for coming in.
Good to be with you again, Josie.
Now, as in opposition, you strongly argued that child protection workers were overloaded and that was putting children at risk. Now, as Minister, you're arguing that by refusing to take on more than 12 cases, child protection workers are putting children at risk. Is this a genuine concern or a tactical move?
It's an absolutely genuine concern. Our worry is that children's lives are being put at risk because they're no longer having workers looking out for them on a day-to-day basis because of the union bans. And there's new children who are being notified to us at possible risk of abuse who we're not able to have a look into and assess their situation once again because of the union bans. This is very serious. We're very concerned about the children, and that's why we're taking this union action.
The failure of DHS staff, or the inability of DHS staff to monitor children at risk, is nothing new though. I mean, you of all people are keenly aware of the Ombudsman, the Coroner's Court, child protection workers themselves raising their concerns about not being able to look after the children in their care properly. Why are you now so concerned about relatively short-term risks to children over a result of a few days of work bans?
But the issue is that a lot of the things that have been highlighted by the Ombudsman, the Coroner, is that they say our bar is too high for letting children into the system. What these union bans do is actually raise the bar even higher. So those children who would have come in under the care and protection of DHS workers now aren't even getting into the system to be assessed and then looked after.
You say that about 1,000 children not yet in the system and about 900 children in the system are at risk because of the work bans. Before the bans began, how many unallocated cases were there in Victoria?
So what we had is around 1,000 unallocated cases. Now we have 2,000 unallocated cases, and as a result of today we've got another 500 on top of that. So we're at 2,500 unallocated cases at this point in time. It's a huge number, and that's why we're so concerned.
So that's 1,000 a day, you say, of cases that are coming. How can that number grow so quickly?
Well, the union bans have been in place since last Friday, and they've been progressively bringing new regions of the state into those bans. So yesterday, Northwest region, which is one of our biggest regions, came online. Today, Southern region did. Southern region alone, with bans in place for about 12 hours, have added an additional 300 children who don't have an allocated caseworker. So this has escalated very quickly in the last few days, which is why we now say it's very serious and we need to stop those union bans.
Do those figures just show how overloaded the system is?
Absolutely. We have a very significant reform agenda on the table, though, in relation to this. I released this back in July. It includes a pay rise in the first year for some frontline workers of up to 15%.
In 1 year?
In 1 year, in the first year. It also includes new career paths so that workers, instead of having to progress to management, can progress up still working with families, which is what often they want to do and what we want them to do. The result of our reforms is actually putting an additional 160 workers onto the front line so that we can work more effectively with families and with children. This is what's being held up by the union and their bans.
Police were able to secure a 19% pay rise over 4 years. The union says that they, in fact, that 15% that is on the table for them is over 4 years as well. Why can't they get the same deal that police were offered?
Well, just to get the facts straight, this is a mix. So our focus on the pay rises has been about the frontline workers, and there are many more workers, of course, included with that. For some of those frontline workers, the increase will be, I think, up over 23%. And there's a pay scale, and we've been very open, and the workers have that pay scale. So we do believe there's significant pay increases because of the productivity and because of the reforms that we've got on the table and the outcomes we think that'll achieve for families. Now, not everyone is at that top end. It's quite a mix. But we're negotiating in very good faith, and it's very unfortunate that the union's not at the table to try and resolve it.
Well, you say you're negotiating in good faith, but you ignored a request from Fair Work Australia not to escalate this dispute before a planned meeting on Monday. I mean, how does that show you want to negotiate?
Well, we've been very clear. We actually asked the union to drop their bans through Fair Work Australia on Wednesday. Wednesday. They refused to do it. So on Thursday we filed to stop the action, not saying, of course, we do want to be at the table negotiating, but we believe that the risk that's being placed to vulnerable children by these union bans is unacceptable. We're not prepared to stand by and watch children be placed at potentially in harm's way, which is why we have to put this application in place.
Your department's currently running an internal review into its operation. The sector, there's a belief in the sector that review will recommend millions of dollars in budget cuts, the loss of up to 100 jobs and a reduction of child protection regions from 8 to possibly 2. Can you rule any or all of that out?
Well, I think it's very exciting that we're looking at how we restructure not only the way we're organised but also the way we work to work more effectively with vulnerable families. This goes from a very silo-based system to actually working with an individual and a family on their full range of needs. We've consulted widely, we're engaging with the sector, getting input and understanding the pilots that have happened and how we can learn to implement this effectively.
So you're not ruling out those significant budget cuts and job cuts?
So what I'm saying is we are reforming the sector. We are still working through. That is in no way resolved. We're working through that process currently. We've got some great advice from some very respected Australian leaders in that process. And through this, the outcome will be we are able to work more effectively with families to actually prevent abuse happening and to prevent the issues escalating rather than what we currently do, which is just continue to respond rather than actually change the outcomes.
How can such big budget cuts and job cuts be reconciled with better care for at-risk children?
Well, I don't think that's the basis of, and I don't agree that that's the basis of what we're heading to or why we're doing it. Why we're doing it is to work more effectively with families, the reform of our approach, the reform of the organisation, and I'm confident, and our commitment is to work more effectively with families, and that's what we will deliver through this process.
This month marks 1 year in power for your government. Do you think that's been marred by the last few weeks of industrial brawling?
I don't. I think, and the unions in many ways have brought this on through their actions in relation to the nurses and also the child protection workers. The message I'm getting is people are very pleased that the Baillieu government's implementing our election commitments, getting on with the job, and part of that process is, of course, dealing with these industrial issues. I think the bigger picture is really what people reflect on, which is over 100 election commitments delivered and a lot of work happening in a lot of areas.
Minister, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Josie.
And we should note that to mark the Coalition's 1 year in power, we did request an interview with Premier Ted Baillieu. He was unavailable.